There was one other 240-seater that he had chartered heading to the Ukraine. 70 seats empty, though, because U.S. soldiers would not let the passengers on board.
That's
it still
so
is chaotic.
So
yeah,
sad.
absolutely.
So many seats empty, and those are lives that we could rescue from the country. They just can't get through these gates.
Chaos.
There are two Iraq veterans that are congressmen, and they were criticized by the administration for going over to Kabul. They wanted to go. They wanted to see exactly what was going on. They have been two of the toughest critics about this pullout of Afghanistan. And you have Seth Moulton, who is a Democrat from Massachusetts, as well as Representative or Congressman Peter Meyer, who's a Republican from Michigan. He talks about the troops on the ground, and he praises them. Listen.
You have individuals there in Kabul who evacuated the U.S. Embassy with moments' notice. I know soldiers who left behind their boots. They're wearing tennis shoes right now. Others who are in the same uniform they had when they evacuated the embassy 2 weeks ago because they didn't have time to grab their rucksack. They went right into Kabul airport, into chaos and pandemonium and tens of thousands overrunning the runway, and then pivoted to not only negotiating and having to deal with the Taliban as frankly, a security partner rather than adversary, but also execute one of the most complicated logistical feats and probably the largest airlift in human history. These people are heroes. Their stories need to be told. And I am so damn proud to be an American from what I saw on the ground in Kabul.
Yeah, he's a Republican, Peter Meyer, speaking to Bret Baier last night. Keep in mind, if they need any equipment, the Akani Network is walking around with it, so maybe they might be able to borrow one of their extra outfits that we left behind. Anthony Gonzalez and Abigail Spanberger, Republican and Democrat respectively, convinced the House Problem Solvers Caucus of 58 people to endorse the expansion of the deadline, because we're not going to be getting all the people out. What I find unbelievable is they can't fill up a plane with all those people inside the airport that don't have to even go outside the airport. They can't fill up a plane, because if you see some of these overhead shots, the place is packed. Now, keep in mind, too, you have a president of the United States who has a State Department that cannot tell you how many people need to get out, which means the Democratic lawmakers Elisa Slotkin and Mikey Sherrill. Mikey Sherrill is a former U.S. naval helicopter pilot, former federal prosecutor, Democrat. Another Elisa Slotkin, former Assistant Secretary of Defense, talked to President Biden yesterday and said, listen, you're not going to be able to get people out. So you got to extend the deadline. He's like, thanks for asking, but I'm not going to do it. On top of that, they're trying to convince them to expand the deadline. But you're saying to yourself, just let's think logically. When you try to get out by the 31st, who's going to be the last person watching security as we leave the country? It was supposed to be the Turks. They are leaving. They are not securing the airport. So who is securing the airport? And is there any military assets out to stop this would-be suicide bomb attack that's supposed to happen in the next couple hours? Right. I thought we had the over-the-horizon capability. Can we get over the horizon?
Well, regarding those two members of Congress who went, it was pretty clear from the leaders on both sides, they are encouraging their members not to go. And apparently there was another trip, unauthorized but bipartisan, they were going to go. They haven't gone, although both sides say, you know what, there could be some members who freelance. But what's interesting about Seth Moulton, the Democrat from Massachusetts, is he told the New York Times last night, he said he was defending the trip, even though he's been lambasted by the White House and the Pentagon. He said he had hoped to get Joe Biden to extend the deadline, but the trip changed his mind. He said there's no way we can get everybody out, so we need to have a working relationship with the Taliban, because, as we just told you, the New York Times says there could be 250,000 people over there that we need to get over here. So we need a working relationship with the Taliban. He also said, and this was an eye-opener, the task force handing out visas is so overwhelmed by requests from members of Congress, because while the State Department has bungled this from the get-go, those many people who have a connection to different states or different leaders are contacting those people in Washington, D.C., asking for those special immigrant visas, because that essentially is their lifeline somewhere else.
Well, there's so many mixed messages. You'll hear Blinken say that they're 1,500. You'll hear a briefer yesterday saying, no, they're 4,100 that are still there. Psaki has said 11,000. What's the real number? I don't even think that they know. But people are wondering what next Wednesday is going to look like. The deadline is Tuesday, the 31st. So what happens on Wednesday? The Taliban takes over. Do they start killing people who are left behind? This is a question we all want answered. And Kamala is laughing about the situation while she's on her trip to Vietnam. Joe Biden is joking about the situation when a reporter asks him about the people left behind. Watch this.
Sir, what will you do if Americans are still there after the deadline?
You'll be the first person I'll call.
It's hysterical.
The interesting thing about that
humor.
is we had to put the audio together with that because the White House apparently cut the feed. As soon as Peter Alexander of NBC asked that question, somebody at the White House just goes, turned it off. But then later the pool feed was released, and that's how we heard what the president did say with that snarky answer.
I don't understand what Seth Moulton and Peter Meyer's theory is on this. They said, well, we're never going to get everybody out, so we should just get out and show compliance. Have you met the Taliban? How are you characterizing them? If the minute we leave, we lose total control of the thousands left behind. If you're one of the thousands, you don't want to depend on the Taliban's diplomacy arm to get our people out. The minute we leave, we are done with, unless we're going to just come in and drop a J-dam on the palace, which might be a good idea, to be honest, or threaten it. We're going to lose all leverage. Those people are gone forever. Well, unless, of course, you want to just write the Taliban huge billion-dollar checks for the next 10, 15 years, because we know they love that.
That could actually be how we do it, because there's a big story today.
Drop a bomb or pay it off?
In the New York Times, there's a story that the Taliban is actually reaching out to former Afghan leaders, people like Hamid Karzai, and people who have been in the government for the last 20 years. Yeah, they're there. And what they're doing is they're saying, we would like you to be part of helping us get into the international community so we can be recognized as an actual country so that we can get the money going again. Because there are, the money has stopped. There are billions in international reserves. And it's being held up because of the worry of what the Taliban is going to do to women and girls. And so the thinking by the Taliban is if we include these people who used to actually get the checks from the international community and say they're part of our team, maybe that will open things up.
Here's the problem. The Taliban already are beating up our people. Did you see the shot of the bloody Australians who had paperwork and tried to get to the door and they couldn't get to the airport, were forced back? The story of this, the Afghan woman's brother trying to get to the door, couldn't get there. So don't worry about what the Taliban says. Watch what they do. Well, and what the UN just did is condemn them for their savage actions because they're getting reports beyond Kabul how they're chopping off limbs and murdering people in front of their family already. So I don't care what they're doing with Abdullah or Hamid Karzai. The fact is they're just as brutal. And if they had let all of our people go, I might be open to maybe the new Taliban. But right now, if they just allowed our people to go, we could get them all out.
Listen to what Mark Meadows says about Biden's new policy.
Joe Biden now has a new policy. It's called America Left Behind. It's a left behind policy. He left behind billions of dollars worth of Humvees and U.S. equipment. He left behind Americans. He left behind our allies. And quite frankly, when you start to look at what he's been involved with, no wonder his polling is going down. But Americans are now starting to understand what President Trump and many of us that supported him knew all along, is you can't run the country from the basement. And today they cut off his mic when he went to talk. He had one question. They cut off his mic. I mean, can you believe it could get this bad this quickly?
They did cut off his mic. So the big question is, how many people will we be able to get out by the deadline, midnight, Tuesday into Wednesday? As we heard from the congressman who went over there, there's no way we can get everybody out. There is also a story out this morning that apparently the CIA and U.S. military are working together to chopper people in and out of the Kabul area. They're using military choppers, but the operations are being run by the CIA. And the Pentagon says they are coordinating with the Taliban on airport security. Unclear if they are working with them regarding the extraction. It's interesting. The Germans, who it sounds like the Germans could actually leave Afghanistan tomorrow. They've been extracting their people. They were going to use the Airbus choppers, those big MH6s, but instead they said, you know what, we need to be a little more tactical and we need to be a little closer, and so they've borrowed from the U.S. military the Little Bird helicopters, because they can actually be flown down streets, below roof levels, and they've got lots of weapons.
That's
so
right.
The Germans have reached out to us, and we are helping provide extraction methods for the German citizens.
And an Afghan evacuee with ties to ISIS was detained at an air base hangar in Qatar. He was one of the ones that fled Kabul. Thank goodness we got him, but it makes you wonder how many others have jumped on these flights that are connected to ISIS. 100 other evacuees were ordered to undergo further security screenings. 100.
Yeah, a couple in Britain, one on the terror watch list landed in France. They arrested him right away. Meanwhile, so what's it going to be like in Afghanistan? What do you think? Here's a quote from Ali Muhammad Ali, former Afghan security official, on the terror threat in Afghanistan as they see it developing. And here's an excerpt from it. Afghanistan has now become the Las Vegas of terrorists. As the radicals and the extremists, people all over the world, radicals and extremists are chanting, celebrating the Taliban victory. Thanks, Joe Biden. This is paving the way for the extremists to come to Afghanistan. They went on to say the United Nations had a report in June concluded that those thousands are from Central Asia, North Caucasus region of Russia, Pakistan. They leave China. So China's keeping an eye on that. Most associations are with the Taliban and Al-Qaeda. Right. Keep in mind, as you watch the Haqqani network, who are as bad as it gets, affiliated directly with Al-Qaeda, they are wearing our equipment, full gear, walking around providing security in Kabul. And the Taliban wants us to think they turned a page and are going to focus on climate change. And Seth Moulton believes, and I give them great credit, I actually love the fact that these two went there. I just cannot, I have to challenge the fact that we're going to be better off getting our people out once we leave. I don't know if you've seen hostage negotiations with terrorists. They usually don't go well.
Well, one of the few female interpreters was on our show earlier, and Brian interviewed her. She had also earlier been captured by the Taliban. Her father, who's with the Afghan forces, helped free her. But she says in retaliation, because she's now in America, they're going after her brother. Listen.
Yesterday, my family and my brother, they were trying to go to the airport, but there was lots of Taliban checkpoints that they couldn't make it to the airport, and he got beat up. Then they go back home. The coalition forces get out of 31st. That's like lots of dangerous for my family and for my brother over there, because there is no safety, there is no hopes in Afghanistan right now. I never think of that the Taliban will take a control of Afghanistan. I never thought that coalition force will leave Afghanistan.
Right, and she's let down direct and resigned to the fact that her brother got beat up yesterday going to the airport gate. Now, Michael Waltz just wrote me, he's watching us right now. He said members of Congress are going over the administration because the administration won't lead. He said he was up all night with American citizens that were turned away at multiple gates. Moulton and Meyer are wrong. All these people, including Americans, become leverage for the Taliban. We cannot leave this country without our people. What don't they understand? That is the American ethos. We don't leave dead bodies behind, let alone live American citizens in a terrorist regime. What are they thinking?
Well, Joe Biden did say, I got a backup plan. Ask the Pentagon guys if we're not going to finish the job midnight Tuesday into Wednesday. Contingency. So maybe that's what's going to happen.
Steve, he said, I told them to come with contingency plans, but he also told them to get out by the 31st. Right. What's the contingency plan?
The majority of America, I would say, sides with you, Brian, on this, because they want all these Americans to come home.
Yeah, unless you want 24 California high school students to stay in Afghanistan because we're in a rush to get out, because Joe Biden wants to pass a reconciliation package. He's got a lot on his mind, and he loves to go to Delaware on the weekends, and he can't do that with a an ongoing situation in Afghanistan.
Only 24% of Americans think that it is going well over there. Everybody is frustrated. Let's see what goes on.
I can't believe anyone would say that.
But the decisions we make
say it's going
I
well.
know those 24%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's hand it over to Jillian. Jillian has some more headlines for us. Good morning. Okay, so let's begin with this tragic story out of Florida because a family vacation. We are back now with your headlines, starting with a Fox News alert. A photo shows an American soldier holding a gate closed sign as the U.S. tells hundreds of people to leave the Kabul airport immediately. The airport is under an imminent terror bomb threat. At least 1,500 Americans are stranded in Afghanistan, including students and parents from a California school district. And then take a look. This photo shows a plane leaving Kabul nearly empty, flying evacuees, a few of them, to Uganda. The White House says 13,400 people have been evacuated from Afghanistan in the last 24 hours. In total, the U.S. has evacuated 95,700 people since August 14th. Delta Airlines will charge employees on the company health plan $200 a month if they fail to get vaccinated against COVID-19. CEO Ed Bastian saying, quote, this surcharge will be necessary to address the financial risk the decision to not vaccinate is creating for our company. Bastian said the average hospital stay for COVID patients has cost Delta $50,000 each. Okay, watch this. A Texas fire department pulling out all the heavy equipment to rescue a deaf elderly dog trapped 400 feet deep in a storm drain. The 15-year-old dog named Zoe was missing for 2 days. Rescue crews used buzzsaws, jackhammers, and even a skateboard to get the dog out of the pipe. It took crews 10 hours to free her. After a trip to the vet, she was reunited with her family. Oh, my goodness. That is a look at your headlines. Ainsley, I'll send it to you. Oh, so sweet.
Finally out.
Thanks, Jillian. Well, as the Taliban takes over, their takeover is fueling fear among the Afghan women, especially. It seems that Vice President Harris's promise in 2019 to protect these women is falling short after her remarks this morning. Listen.
What will the administration do to support women who are not permitted to leave Afghanistan?
We have said before, and I will say again, that we are going to do what we are able to do in terms of the evacuation process. But in addition to that, what we are able to do politically and diplomatically to secure and to continue to work on the protection of women and children in that region, including working with our allies.
Okay, let's bring in Fox News contributor Laura Trump. She joins us right now. Good morning to you, Laura.
Good morning, guys. Great to be with you.
And great to have you as well. So back in 2019, as Ainsley mentioned, Kamala Harris gave a speech to the Council on Foreign Relations and vowed to protect Afghan women if elected. Well, they were elected. And now all she's talking about is, well, we'll do what we can do. What we can do. I think she promised more than that a couple of years ago.